Light mode, dark mode, and color scheme are concepts you are going to hear a lot about in modern web design. And if you are interested in building a website that supports light mode, dark mode, or color scheme, then you're going to definitely want to watch this video. I'm going to show you exactly how to set it up and exactly how it works. So I'm going to share my screen. Before we can get started, we actually need some content on the page for us to work with, something that resembles a web design. So I'm going to go up into the frames library. I'm going to add hero Victor. I will add maybe a dark section next, like content section Quebec. And then let's just finish things off with a footer. We'll use footer Mike. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a landing page going here. Let me just throw in some image content to kind of finish this up. And then I will show you exactly how we can use color scheme to switch this from light mode to dark mode and some other things as well. Okay, let's take a look at this on the front end. So essentially, I've got a little bit of a landing page here. Thanks to frames, we're able to whip that up very quickly. And now we have to just start by analyzing. The first question you would want to ask yourself is this mainly a light website? Or is this mainly a dark website? Because as you notice, and if you analyze enough websites across the internet, a light website, it doesn't mean that there's no dark sections. And a website can be a dark website, but it doesn't mean that there's no light sections. And because of this, because a light website can have dark sections and a dark website can have light sections, color scheme isn't as straightforward as it might seem. And you need to make sure that if you're using a framework, that it has the tools that you need to properly manage that across a real website, not a website where literally every section has to be dark in order for it to support light mode, or every section has to be light in order for it to support dark mode. And then, of course, there's the concept of just supporting an alternate color scheme that's not even a light or dark situation. It's just a completely alternate scheme. Okay, so this one, because it has two light sections to one dark section, it is a white base or a light base, all right? Now, I'm going to open the Automatic CSS dashboard here on the front end. You could absolutely do this in the builder as well. And I'm going to go to the color palette area. The first thing we're going to do is come down to where it says color scheme, and we're going to open the current design tab, and you're going to see website scheme, and light is chosen by default. The reason I said that it's important to analyze the actual website you're working on, the design of the site that you're working on, as the first step is because you can't really start to set up the alternate scheme unless you know what the main scheme is. So we need to determine, is the main scheme light or is the main scheme dark? Now, this toggle right here is not for switching your site from one scheme to the other. It's for informing Automatic CSS what your main scheme is. So since we determined that light is our main scheme, I'm going to leave that on light. However, if the website was mainly a dark design and just had a few light sections here or there, then it would be mainly dark, and I would set this to dark because I'm informing Automatic CSS that dark is actually the main scheme of this website, and when we do an alternate, that would be light in that regard, okay? So that's the first step. The first step is determine what's the actual scheme of the website by default, and then set it here under current design in Automatic CSS. Then we're able to go on to the next step. So I'm going to set that back to light because this website is a light scheme. And now I'm going to come up to the main colors area. And if you're using semantic colors, you'll want to do this here as well, but maybe a little bit more rare for semantic colors. In main colors, you're going to determine what colors need an alternate scheme. So in this example scenario, we are going to be creating a dark mode for this website. Okay, so I need to determine what colors have actually been used. I'm actually going to turn off base and accent. Those were used on our previous examples. We don't even need them. Let's go ahead and hit save. The only colors being used on this website right now are neutral and primary. Okay, so being that neutral and primary being used, this kind of makes it very easy for us. Do I want primary to change? This red color, it's this like Nike red, do I want that to change in dark mode? And the answer is no. This color is going to work just fine in dark mode as it does in light mode. So I actually don't want the primary color to change. But I do want the neutrals to change because the darks have to become, well, do the darks have to become light? No, they don't. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the lights, well, actually, in some cases, the darks do need to become light. But for the most part, the lights need to become dark. But when this becomes dark, this background, the text does need to become light. But this all is happening through the neutral palette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the neutral palette. And I'm going to locate this little toggle that says alternate color. Notice it's off by default. I'm going to go ahead and activate that. And it's going to add a tab right here. So we have neutral, and then we have alt. Okay, I can go back and forth, neutral and alt. Now, what happened here when I turn this on? Well, a couple things happened. Number one, Automatic CSS now knows that you are using an alternate color scheme, and that activates a bunch of stuff behind the scenes that's very technical that you actually don't have to worry about. What it also does is it gives you a bunch of new shades, okay? And this is the alternate shade palette. Now, very important, because I know a lot of people are going to ask. Notice that the shades all have the exact same values, okay? It doesn't flip them automatically. And that's because Automatic CSS supports color scheme. And in CSS, it is actually called color scheme. It's not called light mode. It's not called dark mode. It's called color scheme. And you can actually just change schemes. It doesn't have to be a light dark concept. So we could automatically swap the shade values for you, but that wouldn't serve every user, and that would actually be undesirable in many use cases. So as it stands right now, you manually flip the shades. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Now, we are planning on adding a little button to just automatically invert the shades for you. But as of right now, you just manually invert them. It takes about 10 seconds. I'm going to show you exactly how it's done. So I'm going to switch to the Alt tab, and I'm going to click on the first shade, Ultralight. Remember, for this dark mode concept to work, the lights have to become dark and the darks have to become light. So we're doing all of this with lightness values. What is the inverse of 95? It's 5. We're just going to simply put in the inverse of every shade color. 85 goes to 15. I click on the next one. 65 becomes 35. I click on the next one. 35 becomes 65. Click on the next one. 25 becomes 75. And 10 becomes 90. We're not using the hover shade at all, so I don't really care about it. I have inverted my shades. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. See, it is a little bit manual, but it's not difficult, and it's not time consuming in any form or fashion. And they don't have to be, by the way, direct inverses. They can be whatever you want. It just has to make sense that they're like, if you're doing a dark mode, light mode concept, that the lighter ones are now darker and the darker ones are now lighter. All right. But they can be any values that you would like to use. Okay, so now I have set my alternate shades, and it's actually showing you right here, like the black is white. That's the alternate color. Okay. Now, I could show you here if I activate alternate color on primary, because every color has that toggle switch. You can just use a completely alternate color. You don't even have to do a shade. Like, see that? I'm done. Like maybe I want to select a purple, right? It becomes purple in the alt scheme. I can do that. And say I don't even need to mess with the shades in that regard, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm not doing a light dark concept there. I'm just doing a completely different color. See how it wouldn't be helpful in that regard for us to automatically invert the shades, because that's not really what I'm using that alternate color for. Now I'm going to turn that off because it's just going to add to confusion. I want to keep things as simple as possible, but that's a little demonstration of every single color in the system has the ability to have an alternate, okay? Now, how do we deploy? Let's go ahead and save this. How do we deploy the alternate color scheme? Well, I'm going to show you one utility class that is a very manual thing. And I'm not saying this is how you should do it. I'm showing you that this is one of your options, and this might be valuable in certain use cases. I'm going to hop back into the builder, and I am going to refresh the builder. I'm going to choose my hero section right here, and I'm going to put color scheme /alt. So I'm essentially calling the alternate color scheme into this section right here manually. And look what just happened. It just completely switched. The lights became dark, the darks became light, and it looks fantastic. So this utility class that I wanted to point out is a way for you to call the alternate color scheme manually on any section or group of elements or any individual element by itself. If I remove that and I put it just on this headline, color scheme alt, it's going to flip the value of just that headline. So this is a way to get manual granular control over which sections, pages even, are switching to an alternate scheme. However, okay, the user doesn't have any control over that. That's just you controlling that. And we're certainly not looking at their system preferences, like is there preference for light websites or is there preference for dark websites, and then switching them based on that. It is a very rudimentary manual control, but it is important for you to know that that control is there. And there is an alternate control that is quite important that I'm going to show you in just a second. But what you all came for, what you're all interested in, what you, I'm sorry, not you all, you, the viewer, what you are interested in is how to automatically switch this website from light mode to dark mode. And there's two ways you can handle this. You can handle it with a toggle switch, or you can handle it by looking at the user's browser preferences or operating system preferences and serving them the version that they prefer. Or you can actually do both. You can serve them the one they prefer, but you can also give them a toggle switch. Okay, so we're going to talk about all of these methods. First one is let's just respect the user's preferences, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open, I'm in the builder. I'm going to open the automatic CSS dashboard. I'm going to go to color palette. I'm going to go back to this color scheme area. And we're going to look at the second switch, which is auto color scheme. Okay, and if we hover over, it says, do you want to respect the user's operating system preferences for color scheme? Well, let's go ahead and open our operating system preferences. I'm going to drag this onto the screen here. Let's see if we can make it nice and tidy. Okay, so this is, I'm on a Mac. This is the operating system preferences, and you can see under appearance, there's light, dark, and auto. Okay, so I prefer a light scheme. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to toggle on auto color scheme, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save. My operating system preferences are set to light scheme. I prefer a light scheme, and I'm telling automatic CSS with this toggle switch, hey, show a light scheme to users who prefer a light scheme, okay? And if you notice in current design, or remember in current design, we told automatic CSS the website as it currently is a light scheme. So with all those things combined, when I visit this website, I should see the version I designed. This is the light version of the website. That is the version that I should see. So let's just see if that is correct. So I saved it. I'm going to go reload on the front end, and look at this. I have the version that it was designed as, right? Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to tell our operating system, no. I actually prefer dark websites, okay? So I'm going to open up system settings right here. And I don't know why I closed system settings to begin with. Let's drag it back onto the screen here. Maybe I'll just minimize it this time, or maybe I can leave it up somehow. Okay, I'm just going to select dark right here. Notice that the panel itself went to dark, okay? Now, in order for the website to change, I have to revisit it, because when I revisit it, automatic CSS is going to look for my preferences, and then maybe it's going to serve me the alternate scheme, okay? So I am going to refresh, and look at that. So the hero section has inverted automatically. I didn't put any utility classes on it or anything like that. It's just done it automatically. Now this section changed, it inverted, okay? And then the footer inverted as well. But notice something. When you want a dark scheme, a lot of times you actually don't want any light sections. Remember, this section was already dark. Why are we inverting it? Well, automatic CSS isn't magic. It can't just know, oh, well, that section was dark, let's not invert it. I mean, in some cases you would want it to invert. I don't know. This is just based on your preferences. What we need is a way for you to protect a section and say, no, I don't want that one to change. Well, remember the utility class color scheme alt, where we were able to tell a section to change? There's another one called color scheme main, which actually says, don't change, lock this section to the main scheme. So that's the one I'm going to show you right now. So I'm going to go back into the builder. Let's go ahead and refresh. By the way, in the builder, there's a little toggle switch right here that allows you to preview what's happening in the builder with regard to your color schemes. This makes it very, very, very easy in the development process. Anyway, here's the light version of the website, right? We want to target this section right here, and we want to stop it from changing. We want to lock it to the main scheme. So in order to do that, I'm going to say color scheme main, and I'm going to apply that class color scheme main, and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to refresh on the front end, and now look at this. Now we have a completely dark website with light text. This is dark mode, guys, and it's respecting browser preferences, and I have control over whether individual sections change or don't change. And I did that very, very, very quickly, and it was very easy to do, right? Okay, that's the point I wanted to make. Now, here's the problem, okay? That color scheme main class is still a little bit manual. What if that section, what if I'm doing this dark mode concept later on in the project, and I've already got 50 pages on this website, and I've used that dark section 50 different times. I don't want to have to go page to page to page to page, adding color scheme main, color scheme main, color scheme main, color scheme main. I want to be able to programmatically protect certain areas of the website. Now, this feature I'm about to show you is not available in any other framework that I know of. It's not available in any page builder that I know of. It's not available really in any dev environment that I know of, other than if somebody custom codes it to do this. But in automatic CSS, it's actually very, very easy. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go back in the builder. Let's get rid of the preview on the front end. I'm going to go back in the builder. I'm going to remove color scheme main. I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh again on the front end so that you can see this middle section is still inverting. We don't want it to invert, we want to protect it, but we don't want to protect it with a manual utility class. We want to protect it programmatically, every instance of it across the website, all at once. Here's how we do that. I'm going to open the automatic CSS dashboard. Let me go ahead and I'm going to move this back to the left-hand side where it should be. Okay, I'm going to go to color palette, and under color scheme here, I'm going to go into scheme protections, and there's yet another toggle switch and yet another feature for our color scheme in automatic CSS. I'm going to toggle on lock specific selectors. And what it's asking me is, what selectors do I want to lock to the main scheme? In other words, what areas of the website do I want to not invert or not change to the alternate color scheme? Okay, so if we go back in the builder and look at this, what is this called? Content Section Quebec is the name of the section, is the class that is on the section. And this is yet another reason why a class-first workflow is so powerful. Without a class-first workflow, this would not be possible. But because we have a class-first workflow, we follow best practices. Once again, this opens so many doors for us to do things very efficiently, very maintainably. Okay, so let's take a look at it. I'm just going to say, hey, we want to protect Content Section Quebec. So I'm going to go to the front end, and I'm going to say Content Section Quebec, okay? It is very important to spell it correctly. Notice I'm putting it in quotes, okay? If I take away this and you look at the placeholders, you put the selector, could be any valid CSS selector, in quotes and then comma separate them, okay? So I want to protect Content Section Quebec. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Look at that. So I don't have to refresh because I'm so excited I'm knocking stuff off my desk about this feature. Okay, I'm just joking. So programmatically, we've protected this. The hot reload did its job. I didn't have to refresh the page. And imagine that if there were 50 Content Section Quebecs across this website, they're all protected now. Every single one of them. I don't have to do the utility class dance. I have programmatic control over the areas of the site that I do not want to switch to the alternate scheme. Now I'm going to go back up to system settings. I'm going to choose light mode. Panel's going to turn light. I'm going to refresh the page and look at this. We are once again in light mode, okay? We don't even need the ACSS dashboard anymore. We're back to the main scheme. Let me show you one more time. Let's go ahead and go dark. Let's go ahead and refresh. We are back to dark mode on this website. So whatever the user's preference is, that is the version of the website that they are going to be served. I don't really think it can get any easier than that for managing alternate color schemes on a website, but we are still not done. That is respecting browser preferences. What if we want to add a manual switch? I'm going to show you how that's done. Now, I just remembered something in my head. I got to show you. If I inspect this page and I click this little paintbrush right here, which let me put this on the side so you guys can see it. There's this little paintbrush and it allows you to, it's an emulator. Sorry, my brain was like searching for that word, emulator. It emulates a color scheme preference. I'm gonna emulate a dark scheme and you're gonna notice that nothing changes on the page. Automatic CSS, the way that color scheme works, it does not work with emulators. It only works with actual operating system preferences or actual toggle switches. So if you're trying to use an emulator to look at what's going on, it's not going to work. I just want you to know that. I want that to be baked into this video so that base is covered. It only works with legitimate operating system preference or legitimate toggle switches. Okay, now let's look at toggle switches. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a container to this section right here. And I'm going to move that container to the top. And I'm going to go ahead and go add element. And I'm going to say color. And we're going to find the frames color scheme switch. So we provided, if you own the frames library, we provided a component called the frames color switch. I do provide some manual code for creating a color switch if you're not a frames user, but if you are a frames user, I would highly recommend using the frames color scheme switch. Now, this is a customizable color scheme switch, so you might not look like the way that it looks out of the box, but you can customize every single aspect of it using the panels over here on the right. But what I will show you is we're going to refresh on the front end now, and you're going to see the little toggle switch on the front end, and I'm going to switch it, and out of the box, we are able to switch between light mode and dark mode. Okay. Now, the one thing you should understand about this, all right, remember what my color scheme preference is. Okay. So I'm going to switch this back to our main scheme, right? But I'm going to say, you know what? I actually prefer dark websites. I'm going to refresh and it will not turn dark. Why will it not turn dark even though that's my operating system preference? Well, it's very simple. We start by looking at the operating system preference. But once the user has manually selected a mode, that overrides, that takes precedence over their operating system preference. Why? Because they've declared a different local preference right here on the actual website they're looking at. So yeah, it may be true that they prefer dark sites in general, but if they said on this site, I want a light scheme, that's the scheme that they're going to get. So the toggle switch is what gives precedence over the actual scheme that is chosen. Now, you might be in a situation where it's like, but now I can't even test, right, to see if the operating system preference is still working. You can. Let's go ahead and hit inspect. Let's go now to application. And you're going to see that there's local storage, and you're going to see that this is where we store the preference for the user. You can right click, hit clear, and then we can refresh the page. Dark scheme. Now, why did it serve me a dark scheme? Well, because the toggle switch has not been interacted with yet, right? So it's giving me the dark scheme, but if I say, actually for this website, I prefer light scheme, so I just interacted with the switch. Now I refresh, it's going to stay light scheme. It's not going to give me dark scheme on the refresh, even though that's what my operating system preference is, because I have made a different local preference, and the local preference overrides the operating system preference. Okay, let me go back to camera. So you may need to watch this one more time just to get everything baked into your brain. But to summarize, to recap, every color in the automatic CSS color system has an alternate color available. As soon as you activate an alternate color, the infrastructure for color scheme is loaded. We have a toggle switch that allows you to respect user preference or not. If you leave that off, it won't care about the user preference. It'll just serve the scheme that's there by default. Now, of course, if you're not going to respect operating system preferences, you have to provide a toggle switch. So at that point, you just provide a toggle switch, and the toggle switch does everything for the user. It allows them to swap back back and forth between the schemes and declare their preference locally. And of course, you can do both. You can say, I want to respect operating system preferences by default, but I also want to provide a toggle switch, and I want the toggle switch to take precedence because that is the user setting their local preference for this individual website. Now, with regard to, let me just go ahead and show you one more thing, okay? So I'm going to go into the builder, and I am going to open up the color palette. And I'm going to put this over here so you guys can see it better. I'm going to go to color palette primary, activate the alternate scheme. Purple is fine. Let's go ahead and hit save. Okay. So I just want to show you that it is possible to get out of the dark mode, light mode kind of concept and just choose alternate color schemes. So look now, my red buttons that were previously red are purple. Anything that was using the primary color is now in the alternate scheme. And when I switch back, they are now going to be red. And it's as easy as that, right? It's as easy as that. You can do whatever you want. You can do the dark light concept. You can use a completely different color. You can map all your shades however you want to, so that anything that you want to have happen on the alternate scheme, that's what happens on the alternate scheme. And I just saw it down here out of the corner of my eye, thankfully, before we turn off this recording. I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but you know, it is what it is. We're teaching. We're just teaching. That's what we're on the fly. We're teaching on the fly, okay? Notice that the box shadow for this inverted. So box shadows are dark by default because in real life, shadows are dark. There's no such thing as the concept of a light shadow in real life, okay? And I actually follow that concept in design. I don't really like light shadows in design because light shadows aren't really a thing. Now, that actually becomes a glow at that point, okay? A glow in real life is actually light, but you have to determine, is a glow okay or not okay? So your box shadows by default will invert because they use dark variables, right? But what if you don't want them to invert? What if that look right there is not acceptable to you? And you're like, what do I do? Because I can't put a class like color scheme main on a box shadow. It's not an element. It's CSS behind the scenes. So how do we manage this? Okay. I just wanted to show you this before we get out of here, because everything in automatic CSS is a possibility. Okay. I'm going to go to additional styling. I'm going to go to box shadows and I'm going to look at shadow 1. I believe this is the one being used. We can test it by saying, instead of black trans 10, we could test it by saying red. Let's actually, you know what? It would be probably much better if I just inspected it and I saw, yeah, box shadow M, okay, that is what it's using. And look, so the shadow changed to red. So let me put this back, black trans 10. Remember, black trans 10, that's part of the neutral palette. It's going to invert. It is going to invert on the alternate scheme, okay? So how do I stop it from inverting? Well, what we can do is we can choose a actual static value instead of a token. If it's not tokenized, then it won't switch. Very, very, very simple. Only the tokens are what get interacted with in color scheme in automatic CSS. So if I did something like RGB and I said 0, 0, 0, which is black, and then I do 0.10, which is trans 10, the 10% transparency, that's essentially giving me the same box shadow that I had in the main scheme. But since it's a static value and not a token, it has no ability to switch. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. And we're going to see that this stays dark. It is not going to be a glow. It is not going to be an inverted version. Okay. And then I'm going to go back and we're just going to toggle back to the main scheme. And we're going to see that it's actually still a black box shadow. So I get the same effect that I had on the main scheme. But when the alternate scheme is shown, look, there's no inversion. It's not glowing. Now, if you wanted it to glow, then it's going to glow by default. But if you don't want it to glow, I just showed you how to solve that. Anything, any color, any reference to a color that you don't want to change in some instance, if it's not protectable by the color scheme main class, right? then you could just change it from a tokenized value to a static value, and it'll just remain that static value at all times. It will no longer be swapped by the color scheme. Okay. All right. So let's go back to camera. Again, you might have to watch this a couple times, but the color scheme functionality in automatic CSS is, one, extremely powerful. Okay, this is not a scenario where we just automatically swap things for you. You have full granular control over every single behavior of alternate scheme. Okay, that's number one. But at the same time, we made it about as easy as it can possibly get, especially for such a granularly controlled system. It really, if there is an easier way to do it, I'd love to hear it. I've never seen one. I've never seen one, especially when you consider the fact that we have programmatic color scheme protection, something I've never seen in any development process whatsoever. And this actually, the reason, I'll just tell you quickly why I developed automatic color scheme protection, or this programmatic color scheme protection, is because I had a website, a real client, where the client asked me after the fact. The entire website was done. They made no mention of dark scheme, light scheme. And at the very, very, very end, they were like, by the way, can this support dark mode? And I was like, okay. And it was a mix of light and dark sections. There's a lot of protections that needed to happen. And I was like, well, since I am the owner of automatic CSS and can do whatever I want with it, it seems like we need a new feature, doesn't it? So I went and built the new feature, and then I deployed it on the client's website. And what it allowed me to do is apply a dark mode scheme, granularly controlled alternate color scheme, to an entire website that was already completed in about 25 minutes. I just went through and, all right, there's the class I need to protect. There's a class I need to protect. There's a class I needed to protect. Loaded it up in the auto color scheme protection, flipped the switch, done. Okay. So you can even provide color scheme support and functionality for a website that is completely done and finished and launched thanks to automatic color scheme protection. So it's very powerful. It's also very easy to use, and it's very quick to deploy. If you have any questions about it, do not hesitate to ask in the comments below or in the support community. There is documentation, detailed documentation on color scheme as well, but we are always happy to help you. I will see you in the next video.